Hey, Giants fans, Bob Papa here, along with two-time Super Bowl champion Carl Banks and Super Bowl champion Shaun O'Hara. Welcome to Big Blue Draft Preview, presented by Van Heusen. We got a great show lined up for you as we get you set for the draft and the New York Football Giants as it begins on Thursday night with the second and third rounds on Friday and the rest of the draft on Saturday. We're going to hear from Giants head coach Joe Judge. We'll talk with Giants general manager Dave Gettleman. We'll hear from Daniel Jones, as well as Blake Martinez. Plus, John Schmelk will have a chat with Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network. Now it's time to take a look at the state of the Giants, brought to you by MetLife, as we take a look at the new additions for 2020. We start on the offensive side of the ball, and guys, you take a look at what this football team was able to do both offensively and defensively, and they get some help on the offensive line with Cam Fleming, who's going to come in and compete for a job. They add a back like Dion Lewis. Plus, they've added a backup quarterback in Colt McCoy, and they added a blocking tight end in Levine Tololo. Shaun, I'll start with your side of the ball, the offense. Your thoughts on what the Giants have added into the mix?
Well, I think when you look at those additions, you add another tight end to the mix, and I say, okay, those are blocking tight ends. Toilolo, you're not signing him to have him running down the middle of a defense on a seam route. You're bringing him in to block, and I think that's where the identity of this Giants offense is going to try to take shape. Cameron Fleming, a veteran tackle, has been around the league a long time. He was with Joe Judge in New England for 4 years before he went to Dallas, so he knows Jason Garrett very well. He knows Mark Colombo, the offensive line coach, very well. So familiarity with that. But Cam Fleming brings a lot of experience. If the Giants decide they're going to go with a young tackle and as a high draft pick, he's got some very veteran voices now that he can lean on in guys like Cam Fleming, Nate Solder, and Mark Colombo.
Carl, going to the defensive side of the ball, because Shaun touched upon something, familiarity. And especially with no offseason program, the Giants have brought in some players defensively that this staff has familiarity with. We'll start with James Bradbury, the corner. He was drafted by Dave Gettleman when Gettleman was in Carolina. And then you have Blake Martinez, Kyler Fackrell, who know Patrick Graham from their time in Green Bay. And then Nate Ebner obviously knows Joe Judge from New England. So that's going to help in the learning curve. But just give me your overview of what the Giants have added defensively to this point.
Well, they've added production, quite simply, Bob. When you look at a guy like Blake Martinez, he's a tackling machine. It's been a long time since the Giants have even had a linebacker to get near 100 tackles. It's always been the safeties. This is a guy who understands angles. He understands how to play the position, and he plays it at a high level. But he's also a quarterback out on the football field, so he's going to be able to help. And then when you look at James Bradbury, he's a guy that has competed against some of the best receivers in the NFL, and he brings a level of experience, but also a higher level of production for a young defensive backfield. So that's going to be an upgrade as well, and he should be able to raise the level of the play of some of these younger players. Fackrell is a guy who's been a highly productive pass rusher. He's getting himself back in after injury. So we'll see. I think they've added some really important pieces pre-draft.
Now, on the flip side, we take a look at some of the departures, and you can't talk about guys that are not with the team anymore without starting with Eli Manning. Obviously, Daniel Jones got a year to observe and work under Eli Manning and be around him. Now he's on his own. We'll talk with Daniel a little bit later on in this program. Carl, on the defensive side of the ball, the Giants parted ways with Alec Ogletree, who probably never played up to the billing that was there when he came to the team. Marcus Golden was a great find on a one-year contract, and Michael Thomas made the Pro Bowl 2 years ago on special teams. This segment was brought to you by MetLife. Thank you to the MetLife Foundation for committing $25 million to the global response to COVID-19 in support of communities impacted by the pandemic. It is Big Blue Draft Night Preview presented by Van Heusen as the Giants getting ready for the 2020 draft in a very unique situation. And we are joined by the head coach of the New York Giants, Joe Judge. And Coach, obviously working from home, being in Massachusetts, unique circumstances. Overall, how's it gone for you? And has the family been keeping their part as far as the social distancing?
I'll tell you what, we've definitely been socially distancing. I don't know if that applies so much in the house. We're a lot closer right now together, a little bit on top of each other. But in terms of the entire process, I'll tell you what, it's been really smooth. The staff's worked tremendously. We got a lot of guys for the first time using a lot of technology. They figured it out remarkably well. We got a great IT department and video staff who's really helped bridge the gap for a lot of us. And, it's, I don't want to say seamless, but I'll tell you what, it's taken some effort and we've really gotten to where we need to be.
Coach, you've been through your free agency period and you're obviously getting ready for the draft. Can you give a little insight on what you did in free agency and how that kind of leads you into your thought process in the draft?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's not like we tried to answer one question in free agency and open up, another spot to fill in the draft. Really what we wanted to do across the entire roster was just find good, solid football players who really fit what we're looking for in terms of, smart, tough, and dependable. And we found some guys out there that we really think are going to fit the Giants system and schemes in a lot of different ways. And, we moved forward with it. I think we picked up a crew of really good guys who are going to come in here and compete. They're going to add to the guys we have on the roster. And then in the draft, again, we're looking for the best players available, really at all positions. So we didn't try to answer one question on one side of the ball in free agency and attack it on the other side in the draft. Really, at this point, we're just looking for good players across the board. And I think the thing everyone has to remember, too, is the process of building a roster never really stops. It may start with free agency in the offseason, continues into the draft. Free agency goes through the entire spring as it is. You've got rookie camps, you have rookie mini camps, you have tryouts. You go through training camp, whether that's claiming guys off waivers, whether it's trades with other teams. And then once you get to that 53 for the opening weekend, there's still a lot of transactions that happen, especially those first few weeks of the season. Really once the trade deadline hits in that mid-season point, you have a better idea on the final part of your roster, but there's still transactions that happen. Guys get cut, guys at that point may come back from an injury and at that point are eligible to play. So the building of the roster really never stops. We're just in a different phase of it right now in the offseason.
Coach, I know versatility is a word that you love to use for your players. Obviously, for right now, everybody has to be versatile given the climate right now. When you look at this team, and normally you would have a chance to stand in front of them in a team meeting room and address them. Now you're going to have to do it virtually. Take us inside that first message to your team. What are you going to tell them and what are you going to ask of them?
Well, the first thing we're going to express to the players is the expectations just of what we're looking for this spring. I think it's important that they understand that the offseason is a little different, and they have to understand the goal of what we're trying to get out of it. And to be honest with you, at this point, we're trying to lay a foundation. So, look, the initial part of this program is going to be making sure everyone's on the same page in terms of how to use it and access the information. The second part of it is how we interact with the players and the coaches to make sure that we're getting that information and can use it as we get forward. It's a situation where we can't teach in a classroom, go on the field, and then execute, whether it's phase 2 or phase 3 together. But it's also a situation that gives us a unique opportunity for extended exposure in longer meetings that sometimes you don't get in this part of the spring. We have to take advantage of that meeting time. I think the thing that's been a little bit lost in this that, is the actual socialization of your team. And because we're all segmented, the things you really kind of miss out on team building are the little things. And, Carl, Shaun, you guys know this, sitting at a table eating lunch after a workout, maybe seeing each other on the weekends or golfing in the afternoon on a nice spring day. And we've got to find a way as a team to make sure that when we come here in training camp that we don't have strangers. We have guys who are on the roster, but we have new coaches, we have new players, and continue to be new players added to this roster. And we've got to bridge that gap to make sure when we see each other in August that it may have been through a different medium, all right, but that we've got familiarity with each other. And hopefully life gets back to normal for more than, just this reason, but for the football world, hopefully we can get them in the springtime so we can physically help these guys condition, but that we can at least sit down, look each other eye to eye, and shake hands finally.
Coach, I have a question. We have some season ticket holders that weighed in with some questions as well. And this one comes from Brett Savio with regards to his 9-year-old son, Luke. They're so excited for the season. They're happy to have you as part of the New York Giants program. You talked about team building. What have the challenges been as you've put a new staff together to build team within a new group of coaches?
I'll tell you what, on the surface, you would think it's the separation from us not being together. I think we had a tremendous first part of the spring together. We got late in January, all came together, had a really good February, good first part of March before we got on the road. And then I think the thing we've been able to bridge the gap with is we've got a lot of really like-minded coaches on the staff. There's a lot of really good people. So they've done a tremendous job of reaching out to each other just socially and making contacts with each other. The wives have been talking to each other. We're trying to bridge the gap even with a little bit with the kids. We're meeting on a daily basis, like everybody else in America, like we're doing right now. It's just over a different medium. As far as the team building, Brett, with the coaching staff, I think we laid enough of a foundation early on in the spring that it carried over to this point where we're separate, that it hasn't affected us too much.
With this draft and with the way everything has transpired, have you found yourself having more conversations than probably would normally happen with these college coaches as you try to get more of an idea as, hey, what's the kid like in the weight room? What's he like in the classroom? What can't he do? Have you had to lean on that a little bit more this year?
I don't know if the conversation has been more in number, because whether you're on the campus at a pro day, you're still going to reach out and talk to those same coaches, the strength coach, the head coach. I will say, though, the access we have to certain coaches because of relationships we have with them has benefited us. We've got a lot of coaches on the staff who have prior experience in college, and whether they've been coaching players directly or some of these guys come out that they've recruited, there's some established relationships with the players themselves. The other thing that has helped us is we do have a broad network of coaches. It's nice to be able to sit there and watch tape on a guy and say, we need to find out something more about him. And someone in the group says, hey, you know what? I worked on the staff with the offensive coordinator. Let me give him a buzz and really find out about him. What you find out about a lot of guys is, and good nature is, coaches don't want to hurt their players. So a lot of times you go into a college and they're going to tell you all the positives about somebody. What you're looking for is someone who's going to tell you the hard truth. Okay? You don't want someone to try to kill a player, but you want to know what makes them tick as well. What's been a challenge for them over those 3 or 4 years in college? And that way you have a better insight into how you can coach them more effectively and help them be a professional.
Coach, we appreciate a couple minutes. I know that you're busy with draft stuff following us, but good luck this week with the draft coming up. And thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
You are watching Big Blue Draft Preview presented by Van Heusen. And a reminder, Giants fans, make sure you go to the Giants YouTube channel, Giants.com, and the Giants mobile app on draft night. Immediately following the Giants picks in the first round, second round, and third round, we will have instant reaction. All right, Carl, as of now, the Giants have the 4th overall pick in the draft. They've got a lot of needs. Obviously, they need a pass rusher. They need help on the offensive line. They could certainly use another wide receiver. When you take a look at this draft and sort of the strength of it, what kind of jumps out at you, and which direction do you think the Giants may or may not be leaning?
Well, I think you first have to evaluate what the state of your team is. You're picking number 4 for a reason, right? But then you also have to look at where your most valuable asset is, and you cannot ignore it and just say, we'll find some people that can help us with our quarterback as the draft goes on. But there are some unique players in this draft, like the linebacker from Clemson, Isaiah Simmons, the offensive line group, the wide receiver group, and then there's some unique linebackers in there. Now, not all of these guys that we're talking about as linebackers are ready to go day one. They all have limitations, but they all do. But some of these players here can really help the Giants football team.
Shaun, let's get into some of these names on the offensive line, because there's been a handful, a half dozen or so names that have been bandied about in a lot of different mock drafts. And I know you've had a chance to study them. You played the position along the offensive line. Which guy jumps out at you as maybe number one in your mind's eye?
I just go back to Dave Gettleman's mindset when the Giants had the number 2 overall pick a couple of years ago. And he said, when you're picking that high, you can't miss. It's got to be a generational type player. Well, 2 slots back at 4th overall, the same mindset has to occur. If we're going to draft a tackle, who's going to be our guy for the next 10 years? Who's going to be a Pro Bowler? Who's going to be somebody we look back on and say, change the trajectory of the tackle position for our franchise for the next decade? Left tackle, I see Andrew Thomas from Georgia. This guy can do it all. He's a pure left tackle. He's got the longest arms in this entire draft, and I love his footwork. So I think he is probably one of the safest picks at left tackle. When you look at the right tackle, Jedrick Wills from Alabama, Wills, to me, was the most exciting tackle I could watch on film. His hands were electric. He had great feet. I call him easy feet with nasty hands. And I think that having those sweet feet is really what separates him from some of these other tackles. So when you look at the Giants, what a great time to have this 4th overall pick. It's a position of need, and yet it's also one of the most highly talented positions in this draft. So those 2 tackles to me are right at the top of the list. I know there are some other guys that people are talking about. Tristan Wirfs is a very good tackle. I think he's probably the safest pick out of all 3 of them. But Jedrick Wills, to me, is the best right tackle. If you're the Giants right now, you draft a guy like that at 4th overall. You put him in a right tackle. He's starting week 1. You don't have to worry about it for the next 10 years. You're going to sign him to another contract. He's going to make Pro Bowls. He's a young kid. He's only 20 years old. He can't even buy a beer yet. He's been starting for 3 seasons now at right tackle, started as a true freshman. So, he's gone against the best competition college football has had to offer, and I have no doubt that he's going to translate to a great pro.
Well, that's the beauty of the draft and the intrigue. You never know what's going to happen, which makes it must-see TV. And Giants fans, don't forget, we will have instant analysis on the Giants YouTube channel, Giants.com, and the Giants app Thursday night after the Giants make their pick in the first round, and then, of course, on Friday after their 2nd and 3rd round picks. There is a lot of intrigue. There's a lot of talent in this draft. For more on that, we welcome in Giants insider John Schmelk, who spoke with Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network.
And now we're joined by NFL Network draft analyst Daniel Jeremiah. You can find them on Twitter at Move the Sticks, also the host of the Move the Sticks podcast with Bucky Brooks. You can also find him on Pat to the Draft. It is required viewing for Draftniks every weeknight at 8 p.m. on NFL Network. Daniel, hope you and your family are holding up during these very, very odd times in our country.
Nah, we're doing good. I appreciate you asking. Hope everything's well on your end with your crew. It's crazy time we live in, but I cherish these moments where we can, get a little bit of an escape and talk some sports.
And we're all excited about it. So let's start with the Giants at number 4. If you look at your top 50 board, which you can find on NFL.com, you kind of have those 3 defensive players, Simmons, Derek Brown, and Jeffrey Okudah in the top 5 of your big board. Let's start here. How much separation do you have just in terms of raw grade between those guys and the top offensive tackle prospects?
Well, there's not much because when I have Mekhi Becton is right there. When you look at Okudah as my 5th player, Mekhi Becton, the big tackle from Louisville, comes in as my 7th player. So it's pretty close there. I think you just kind of come down to where the need is and what positions that you value. I have Isaiah Simmons all the way up there. Now, some folks will say, we don't value the off-the-ball linebacker, or hybrid player maybe as much as some other teams do. But having a chance to call the Charger games and see Derwin James and his versatility, what that does, what allows you to do against some of these offenses that you play against, that's why I'm pretty bullish on him and a big fan of his game. But to answer your question, I don't think there's a tremendous gap there between those guys and Becton. And I would even say, for me, Jedrick Wills is the 2nd tackle. I think all those guys are right there together. But the ultimate quest for this team is to see Daniel Jones continue to grow, develop, and take that next step. And so that's when I come down on this saying, okay, I might have higher grades on these defensive players, but where is our focus? Where's our priority? And to me, it has to start with helping this kid really be successful.
If you were the GM of the Giants, who's your pick it for, assuming that Chase Young is off the board and let's say 2 of the quarterbacks? And who do you think David Gettleman will select at number 4 based on your intel right now?
Sure, I would take Mekhi Becton. I would, from Louisville, and I'd let him play right tackle. He's played on both sides. I'd let him play right tackle initially. I think he'd be my long-term left tackle when it's all said and done. But I'm going to protect my quarterback, so that would be my first. That would be my first option there for them. And then in terms of what I think they will do, I think it will be a tackle. I think it's Tristan Wirfs, to me, is a name that I heard very early on with them, and so I'm going to stick with that. And I'll say they go to Iowa to get one they can put right in the fairway.
Hey, can't go wrong with an Iowa offensive tackle, right, Dan? You're really good stuff, man. We appreciate the time. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Yeah, all the best. Be safe, too.
You're watching Big Blue Draft Preview presented by Van Heusen as we get ready for the Giants taking on the 2020 draft in a whole unique fashion. And we're joined by the Senior Vice President and General Manager of the New York Giants, Dave Gettleman, working from his home. Dave, you've seen a lot of things over a long and illustrious career, but this one probably takes the cake, doesn't it?
No, this is unique. This is definitely unique. You know, it's been a great experience in terms of watching how everybody in the organization has really stepped up. there's the technology piece, which is huge. Justin Warren and his group have done a great job. Ty Siam and his guys have done a great job. And Chris Pettit, our director of college scouting, has just been fantastic in terms of we're Zoom meeting and actually watching film together as a group. And he's been in charge of that. So it's been different and unique, and we're gonna be fine.
Dave, when it came to interviewing some of the guys post combine, what was that process like? Is it obviously you can't look a guy in the eye in person, but were there some of the interviews that had to be done over Zoom for some of the candidates?
Really, Kyle, we've done all of them over Zoom. For the most part, you really can get a little bit of more of a feel for a guy than I thought you'd be able to. You still want to. You're still missing pieces. You still would rather be able to touch the guy and do that kind of thing, have him in the facility, see how he operates and moves around the building. But it's been better than I'd hoped.
Certainly a lot of unknown with this draft, but let's focus on something that is known. All right, 4th overall pick in this draft. You have never traded down your first round pick. All right, I know you said that you're open for business, but there's some really good players at 4th overall. Now, this is just you and me talking here, Dave.
Right.
You got a chance to take Hog Molly. All right, and nobody's gonna give you any grief whatsoever. There's some really good tackles available in this draft. What are you leaning towards, and what do you see from some of these tackles in this draft?
The whole tackle class is thick. I mean, there's players, in every round, guys that you could take and feel good about. I've said it before. The 4th pick of the draft, you should be saying to yourself, "Can I picture this guy wearing a gold jacket?" It's reality, Shaun. I've never traded back before, partially because I've seen teams trade back and trade themselves out of really good players. But I am, we are truly open, because the other part of it is not only do you have to ask yourself the question, do you picture this guy in a gold jacket? You also have to ask yourself the question, is this guy I'm thinking of taking it for worthy of being the 4th pick of any draft? It's the same conversation we had with Saquon 2 years ago when we were sitting at 2. Okay. It's, is this guy worthy of being the 4th pick of any draft, not just the 2020 draft? And those are the conversations we'll have over the next few days.
As you look at building this roster, can we glean anything into the style of coaches that you have? And when you look at this draft, yes, there's some fun-looking defensive players out there. Obviously, like you said, it's thick with offensive linemen. There's a lot of speed and wide receiver. Do you start to factor in how your coaches are going to be able to coach some of these guys?
I believe in collaboration, and certainly with the new coaching staff, we've got to get a feel for the types of players they're looking at. Defensively, and offensively, it doesn't make a difference. You're always looking for fit. Does this player fit what we want to do? We're drafting a different type of player. The college game is different from ours, and we have to draft a guy that we feel we can take advantage of his talents and also use him in our systems.
We have some season ticket holders that weighed in with some questions as well. And the first one is from John Paul Dedayan. How do you determine the football intelligence of a player besides standardized testing or chalkboard work when players may not process things as fast on high levels when adrenaline kicks in and in the course of action?
Well, it's on film. To me, the stuff off the field are just indicators. Okay, a Wonderlic test score is just an indicator. A psych test is an indicator. Putting a kid on a board is an indicator. It's what he does between the white lines. That's what tells you how smart a football player he is. Kyle, you've seen it. Shaun, you've seen it. There are plenty of guys that go to a meeting room and walk out of there and they got it down cold. But as soon as the ball is snapped, oh my God, they're lost. It's like I tell the guys will look at me, well, he's got a 35 test score. That's wonderful, and he's going to make a lot of money on Wall Street. But in between the white lines, he's still looking for it. So it's really football instincts are really, to me, really.
Okay, we have one more fan question for you before we wrap up. It's from Ron Safer. Obviously, work ethic and drive are important as far as the scouting process is concerned, evaluating players. How difficult is it to get accurate information on that component of what makes a guy tick as you're doing the evaluation process?
I think if you work at it, you can get the information, the real information, if you work at it. One of the advantages of having college scouts be in an area year after year after year is they'll develop contacts that people will get comfortable with them, and they'll give them information they'll give them honest information. You just got to work at it. You got to dig in, and again, you can figure it out if you work at it. You really can.
Dave, we appreciate a few minutes. Best of luck with the draft coming up, starting on Thursday, and obviously Thursday, Friday.
Yes, and you all be careful and be safe, okay?
Yes.
All right, God bless you.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, we want to thank Giants Senior Vice President and General Manager Dave Gettleman. And fans, don't forget our draft coverage. As soon as the Giants make their pick in the first round, second round, and third round, we are going to be live with instant analysis. You'll hear from the picks and the people that made those picks. You go to the Giants YouTube channel, Giants.com, and the Giants app. Last year in the first round, the Giants' first round pick was quarterback Daniel Jones, and he takes a couple minutes to join us right now. Daniel, obviously this is a weird time with what we're dealing with as a nation, what we're dealing with around the world. How have you dealt with, the challenges of trying to social distance and keep your mind and your body right in preparation for a football season?
Yeah, so I've been actually came down here back home to Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm staying with my family here, and all three of my siblings are back here, so we're packed in and doing our best to quarantine, social distance. Luckily, my siblings are pretty active, so we're doing a good job staying in shape. We've got some weights and some equipment in the garage. So I've been doing that and running around, try to stay in shape. But it's definitely tough. It's calling on all of us to be creative and find ways to stay in shape. But I feel like I've been able to do it so far.
DJ, you got a new offensive coordinator, and I know you're familiar with what the Dallas Cowboys did defensively. Have you been able to kind of dig into what the offense in Dallas was like under Jason Garrett and be able to kind of get an idea of what's going to be expected of you in this offense?
You certainly see a lot of Dallas offense film too, but just playing in the division and then playing against all the teams that we're playing. So we've certainly I've seen their offense and seen what they've been able to do. Kind of getting going next week with virtual meetings and starting that up. So I look forward to getting into it and learning the system.
DJ, obviously it's a different offseason for everybody, and leading up to this draft, we're in kind of uncharted territory. But for you, it's a year ago, total uncertainty, had no idea where you're going to go. Now you can sit back and you have film, you have games, you went back and you watched a lot of this stuff. What did you learn about yourself, both good and bad, from this past season?
More than anything, how important taking care of the ball is and making sure that we're, maximizing our chance to win by holding on the ball, by, coaches say finishing the drives with a kick, with a punt's not always a bad thing in the NFL. It's just the, opportunity to control the game with turnovers and how much, that can hurt the game. So I think, that's the biggest thing. I think, adjusting to the speed of the game, adjusting to, playing against, NFL rush, NFL DBs. I think, all that, you learn a lot quickly and just being in it for a year. I think, it's been interesting to go back and study myself. Obviously, we'll be in a new system this year and doing some new things, but, certainly a lot to learn from the experience last year.
Have you had much contact with the other players on the offense, your offensive line, your wide receivers?
Yeah, we've been in touch. Everyone's at home and itching to get back. But we actually got on a Zoom call with offensive line a couple weeks ago, and keeping in touch with the receivers too. I think everyone's doing a good job staying in shape, and everyone's itching to get back to work and get started toward work toward next season without being together.
The Giants did sign Colt McCoy. How important is it for you as you go into year number 2 to have a veteran guy there as just another set of eyes to bounce things off of?
Yeah, I think last year working with Alex and Eli in the room, I thought I learned a ton just being around those guys, hearing those guys talk, how they watch film, kind of what they were looking for, plays they liked, plays they didn't like, and why they wouldn't. I think all those things, and just hearing them talk about the game, hearing the things they would think about was huge for me and my growth. And going into this next year, I mean, I think it'll be a lot of the same in that respect with 2 older guys who know a lot of football, who have been around a lot of different offenses and know the game well. So I think that's an advantage for me, and I look forward to learning from them.
Well, Daniel, we appreciate a couple minutes. Glad to hear that you and the family are safe, and hopefully we see you back up in New Jersey sooner rather than later. But thanks for a couple minutes for joining us. I know it's a treat for Giants fans to hear from you, and let's hope this thing ends sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Stay safe.
You are watching Big Blue Draft Preview presented by Van Heusen as we get you ready exclusively for the Giants draft, and we're going to have live reaction on the Giants YouTube channel. And right after the Giants make their first-round pick, their second-round pick, and their third-round pick, and we are excited to welcome in one of the newest members of the New York Giants. Blake Martinez joins us. And Blake, it's certainly been odd times with everybody dealing with the coronavirus and self-quarantine. How have you been managing to stay in shape and kind of keep in touch with what's going on being a new member of the Giants?
Yeah, no, it's definitely been a tough time. I've been fortunate to basically have a full kind of weight room and facility that me and my dad built over this past year. So that's helped a lot. And then just kind of trying to find different things to keep my mind going, because I think that's one of the crucial parts of football is being able to have that intellectual ability to still understanding football, understanding small things, looking over things, whether it's watching certain clips that they put on the iPads and stuff like that we're allowed to watch right now, and just trying to keep engaged with that. So once we step into those meetings, it's not all of a sudden like, wait, okay, how do I line up? How do I trigger in the A gap? How do I do a hook curl? Whatever it is, just to keep those things flowing in my brain.
Blake Carl Banks, welcome to the Giants family. Can you share with the fans a little bit about what you bring as a linebacker to the Giants defense?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is how I put it. We had a saying back at Stanford called kind of intellectual brutality. That's been kind of my forte throughout my whole career of just understanding where to line everybody up, understanding what an offense is trying to do, understand what guys I can kind of maneuver within a pre-snap communication, those types of things to allow them to make plays. And then for me, it's just playing fast, physical, getting off blocks, making plays, doing whatever is necessary to allow us to get that team into that third down, get the ball back for our offense, and just make the overall team better.
Blake, listen, you're a tackling machine. Nobody's had more tackles than you in the last 2 seasons combined. I enjoyed watching you in Green Bay. Look, you've got some pass rushing skills too. I saw you at the line of scrimmage getting after the quarterback a little bit too. So Carl just mentioned all of that you're bringing to the Giants. I'm really curious about your relationship with Patrick Graham. What has that been like, your experience in the past, and how is that helping you now?
Yeah, no, he's probably is the smartest coach I've ever been around, just in his understanding, his IQ of football. And it was so crazy to kind of look back to my third year with him as my inside linebacker coach and think about every given Sunday I went into that game knowing what to expect on first down, what to expect on second down, what to expect on third down. It just made the game kind of come to you that much easier, and you didn't have to worry about those things, and it allowed you to just go out there and play fast. I think that's what helped me tremendously that third year and kind of moving into my fourth year having that knowledge.
Blake, I'm curious. I know you said you've been, you watch film on yourself and you kind of evaluate everything that you've done. If you were to pop in some video of some other linebackers around the league, who do you like to watch film on, and who do you try to emulate?
Yeah, I think it's something that kind of adapted throughout the years of certain guys I'm watching. I think this last year, I think one guy that I thought had the greatest season was Eric Kendricks. He played phenomenal last year. Just his ability to run the defense, be able to get in zones, have all those pass breakups, do all the things he did across the board. I think he was one of the guys that I would always, especially obviously being in the same division, would watch his games and those types of things. And then my number one has always been Bobby Wagner. His ability to get off blocks, get guys lined up, command of the defense, be able to make plays in crucial moments, and just kind of dissecting those things of, okay, what did he see here? Why did he make that play? What was he anticipating? Did he see a motion? Did he see a shift? Did he see a quarterback say something? Whatever it can be that you kind of could tell on film that I can kind of take from him.
Blake, a lot of our fans, or a lot of football fans in general, fall prey to the narratives. Can you explain what this whole concept of being a cover linebacker is and what a linebacker in coverage is? It's baffling when I listen to fans talk about, well, he can't carry this tight end or he can't do that. I'm like, well, that's not how defenses are set up. They have safeties for that in those situations.
I think when you talk about coverage linebacker, at least in my opinion, it obviously depends on if you're the Mike or the Will or whatever certain teams end up calling it. But for me in my position, it's, hey, when we ask you to cover a running back one-on-one, go and cover him. And then also on the other aspect, which I think is even more crucial, is the zone drops. One of the things that I pride myself on is being able to do that. And I don't think it gets as much appreciation as if you're watching a person's tape and seeing them, okay, this guy covered this running back one-on-one, 50 snaps, and he didn't catch a ball. But not many people look and see, okay, wow, Blake passed off 4 different players and all of a sudden dropped back in his zone, and now the quarterback's getting sacked because he couldn't get his initial read and then couldn't get his deep read right after Blake dropped into it. And so I think that's other components that other people don't tend to kind of see whenever they're watching tape.
Yeah, it was music to my ears because a smart cerebral linebacker is what this game needs, and it's certainly what the Giants defense needs. So I'm just so happy that Blake's part of this Giants defense, and I'm just looking forward to everything that he can bring because clearly he understands the game.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm trying to be like you now. I was trying to get that number 58, but I got 54 right now. I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
All right, that was one of the newest Giants, Blake Martinez, for joining us, and that segment is brought to you by SAP. Thank you to SAP for conducting a virtual Take Your Child to Work Day on April the 23rd at 12 p.m. Eastern. Be sure to check out the live event on SAP's YouTube page to watch Saquon Barkley demonstrate at-home workouts your entire family can do together. Hashtag SAP Virtual Take Your Child to Work Day. You're watching Big Blue Draft Preview Live, presented by Van Heusen. Don't forget, Giants fans, on Thursday night after the Giants' first-round draft pick, and then on Friday after their second and third-round picks, we will go live to bring you all of the details, analysis. You'll hear from all the decision makers on the Giants YouTube channel, Giants.com, and the Giants app. Well, it's been a busy offseason for the other teams in the NFC East. The Eagles made a trade for a corner with the Lions, bringing in Darius Slay. The Redskins have a new head coach, and the Dallas Cowboys got their quarterback franchise tagged, and they got their wide receiver signed, sealed, and delivered. For more on the NFC East, we welcome back in Giants insider John Schmelkin. John, the level of competition in the NFC East seems to just keep getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah, no question about it, Bob. And the Eagles are the only team that's returning their head coach in 2020. The other 3 franchises all have new offenses, new defenses, new head coaches. So it's certainly a time of transition. The Eagles won the division last year, but remember, it's been more than 15 years since the same team won this division 2 straight years. So there's going to be a lot of change once again in 2020.
John, what about the Washington Redskins sitting there with the number 2 overall pick? We've heard some rumors that maybe they don't really love Dwayne Haskins all that much. Remember, as you said, it's a new head coach, different set of ideas. Tua could be sitting there on the board. Do the Redskins stay put? Do they just take Chase Young and add to that front, or are they open for business, in your opinion?
Well, based on the word out there, they are locked in on Chase Young, and I think it's the safe pick for them to make. Remember, the Redskins not only have a new head coach in Ron Rivera, who would probably want an impact defensive player, they have not hired a new general manager yet. They are waiting for that until after the draft. So I wouldn't think they would want to move on from a quarterback they selected in the first round last season without a general manager in place. So they could pick Tua there. If they get a huge haul from another team looking to trade up, a trade down is always an option. They can get an impact defensive player at number 5 or number 6 if the Dolphins or Chargers are interested. But I would be pretty surprised if Chase Young is not the pick for the Redskins at number 2, despite the fact they already have a pretty powerful front.
Yeah, I think the luxury of sitting there at number 2 is when you have a guy, if everybody thinks Joe Burrow is going number 1, you have a guy that you have no problem taking, like John just mentioned, in Chase Young. But your phone's right there, all right? And in this digital draft that we're going to be, they're going to be open for any phone calls because they also need tackles, all right? Trent Williams still has been AWOL. And for them, I could very easily see Ron Rivera saying, look, I've got basically a 3-year scholarship right now. I'm a new coach. I'm going to build for the future. It may not be so much about Dwayne Haskins, but if I can slide back 5 picks and still get a tackle and accumulate another first-round pick for next year, that to me is a no-brainer if you're Ron Rivera and the Washington Redskins.
John, I want to go on to the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, when they made the trade for Amari Cooper 2 years ago, they had to get him signed because they gave up their first-round draft pick. They got him in the fold. Just talk about the changes in Dallas, though, with Mike McCarthy there and an entire new staff.
Yeah, Mike McCarthy's the head coach. He'll put in that, West Coast style scheme. Mike Nolan's going to be the defensive coordinator. And if you just take a look at what they lost in free agency, I think that really points you, Bob, to where the Cowboys will look in the draft. They lost their top cornerback in Byron Jones. They lost their second best pass rusher, arguably their best pass rusher last year, in Robert Quinn. And they lost their starting slot wide receiver in Randall Cobb. So those are 3 spots that the Cowboys, I think, will be taking a look at when they pick right smack in the middle of the first round of this draft: pass rusher, cornerback, slot wide receiver. I think the Cowboys believe they are still contenders. If a lot of those top players in those positions, the Kayvon Chaisons, the C.J. Hendersons, those top 3 wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb, if they're all gone when the Cowboys select in the middle of that first round, I think they'll look to deal down and pick up some extra picks. But they're hoping to get a premium player there that can help put them back into the playoff picture in 2020.
Carl, I want to take you to the Philadelphia Eagles because, as John mentioned, they're the only team that has the head coach coming back, by the way, who won a Super Bowl, the defensive, the quarterback. They have continuity. And in any other year, that's an advantage. But this year, with the offseason program not existing, and who knows what training camp's going to look like, it gives Philadelphia a decided leg up on the division, doesn't it?
I would like to think so, Bob, because the one thing we've learned about Doug Peterson is he can stabilize his unit in a lot of chaos. And what happened last year when they had injury after injury, he was still able to coach them into the playoffs. So I would like to think that that factor will certainly have an impact on how they start their season and give them an advantage.
That's a look around the NFC East, brought to you by Pepsi. PepsiCo is investing more than $45 million globally to fund vital support, including protective gear for healthcare workers, testing and screening services, and is distributing more than 50 million nutritious meals to at-risk populations with food banks around the world as part of its #GiveMealsGiveHope initiative. All right, the draft is going to have a lot of fun and a lot of intrigue, and you could be fan on the spot. That's right. We are going to go live as soon as the Giants make their first round pick on Thursday night and then their second and third round picks on Friday night. Make sure you tune into the Giants YouTube channel. Go to Giants.com or check out the Giants app. You'll hear from the decision makers. You'll hear from the pick, and we will give you instant analysis, and it all comes live. So for Carl Banks, Shaun O'Hara, John Schmelk, and our entire crew, I'm Bob Papa. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Big Blue Draft Preview, presented by Van Heusen.